right. Well, by my clock, we are right on at the top of the hour here. So, introduce myself for those that you don't know me. Some of you do, from names I see in the list of people that showed up, but some of you don't. I'm Mike Dell. I'm the Blueberry Customer Support Manager. I'm the guy that answers the phone most of the time when you call Blueberry for support, or at least you get my voicemail and I call you back. That's usually how it happens. And so keep try to keep all the support stuff going. You never know though. So anyway, let me unpause my screen, and if you have any questions along the way, you can put them in the questions section here on GoToWebinar. And let me make sure, let me know if you can't see something or hear something. I do believe I have everything started properly, and you should be hearing me. Whoops, other than my creaky microphone there, you should be hearing me pretty well. There we go. Got to turn off that other microphone. I had two microphones going. Crazy. Got a new toy here. All right, so we're going to configure Blueberry, PowerPress, and Blueberry hosting. If you're using Blueberry hosting, if you're not, I will point out the differences between with hosting and without hosting. And we'll go through, some of the things. We'll show you how to submit it to Apple. That is, knock on wood, if Apple's not having their problem they were having yesterday. So may not get to see that, but I'll at least tell you how to do that. And a few other things. And like I said, if you have any questions, put it in the question area of GoToWebinar. All right, so this is a very blank WordPress website that obviously needs PHP updated, so ignore that. But this is the underwater basket weaving .NET website. That's what I use for this demo every couple of weeks or whenever I do these. And this is what yours is going to look like. You probably have more stuff here because you have more plugins. I don't have very many plugins at all. One plugin I highly suggest that you get before you get going too far is the Classic Editor plugin. That makes it so much easier to make podcast or blog posts, which are indeed podcast posts. But if you're used to the other editor, then that works too, but things move around just a little bit from what I will show you here. So first thing we're going to do on your blank site is to add PowerPress. So we're going to go to Plugins, click Add New. Now, if you're using a PowerPress site, it's a site hosted at Blueberry. If you're using a PowerPress site, you do not need to install PowerPress because PowerPress is installed automatically. So, but for all others, if you don't already have PowerPress, then come over here and type PowerPress. You don't have to have the capitals, but my computer does that automatically. Click Install Now. And once it's installed, click Activate. And then you'll see down here, there's a new thing in the menu, PowerPress. So we're going to go, this is where we're going to be working on most everything to do with your RSS feed is done in PowerPress. Nothing has to be done at Blueberry. So just know that Blueberry, when you're using PowerPress, everything happens at your PowerPress site minus a couple of things which I'll show you have to do at Blueberry. If you're not hosting with Blueberry, then ignore that part. All right, so you're going to come in and it's going to be in what's known as simple mode. Well, since you're watching this video or being at this webinar, you're going to automatically be advanced. So first thing I want you to do is hit the blue button that says switch to advanced mode. And it's going to come up, actually that one will not be checked either. When it first comes up, go ahead and check it. Whatever, it's the bottom one, PowerPress playlist player, which I'll show you how that works a little bit later. But the first thing you're going to want to do, if you're hosting with Blueberry or you have already signed up for stats, if you're just going to do stats, but you have to have already signed up for stats or this will not work. Come to the Services and Stats tab, click here to configure Blueberry Statistics and Hosting Services. And it's going to come up like this. You type in your blueberry.com email and your blueberry.com password. Not what's here. See, I've got LastPass and all these things think that I want to log into my WordPress site. No, I'm already logged into my WordPress site, so I don't want that. Why can't I get rid of that? Oh, well, anyway, you type in the email address you use to log into Blueberry. And then you type in the password you use to log into Blueberry. And you hit save on the left. We did that just to mess people up, and it works. And don't save the password and whatever password manager you're using, because it won't help you here anyway. And then you should see settings saved successfully. Close it and click Save Changes. And you're going to see this green check mark. Blueberry Statistics and Media Hosting enabled. And don't worry about these other things here. Those are specialized things. You can remove the stats from the dashboard if you want, but yeah, nobody does. And network mode, that's for people that have way more time on their hands than they need. As I always tell people, if you're going to do one podcast from a website, it's X amount of work. If you're going to do more than one podcast from a website, it's 10X that amount of work. Just keeping them straight. But we can do that. And contact me if you want to learn how to do that. So in the Episodes tab, that's the next thing I want you to do. The top two should be checked. All these other things, just add fields to the podcast episode area of your post. So if and not all of them apply to video or audio podcasting. A lot of the stuff is automatic. In fact, all of the stuff is automatic with the exception of, you might as well turn these on. I'm going to actually push for these being on by default, but where it says iTunes episode title field and iTunes episode number, season, and type fields. Now, you don't want to use the season and type fields unless you really know what that is. And the episode title field is only handy if you're going to want to put episode numbers in your actual blog post titles. I'll show you that when we get to the point where we're going to post episodes. But that's really the only two things you should do in here. One other thing that might be a good idea is this podcast permalink setting. Pull this down and click Match Feed to Page Category and save changes. It won't hurt anything if you don't need it, and it will prevent you from messing up your feed if you do something silly like have a podcast singular category or a podcast page. And really, you don't need a podcast page because your blog roll is your podcast page. But if you want to have a page that is /podcast, if you don't have this setting set down here, it won't work. So, but go ahead and do that anyway. But I highly suggest not having a podcast page or /podcast as a page or a category called podcast. Plural is fine. Podcasts with an S, or episodes, or something like that as a category or a page is fine. The word podcast will conflict with your RSS feed. All right. Next one, website. This is how the player is going to show up on your blog posts. This is what controls that and what links show up underneath the player and that kind of thing. It does not control what player it is. It controls just how the player is positioned on the site and what's included in the player. So, all right, so down here a little ways, what I always like to do is right now it says below page content. That's your blog post. I always like to have the player above the page content. Have it right in your face. Now, you also have the option of placing the player anywhere you want to in the blog post. You could hit disable, but then if you forget to put the shortcode in, the player doesn't show up at all. So I suggest leaving it at either top or bottom, and then this short code right here you can place in your right here, this part right here, this bracket, PowerPress bracket. You put that anywhere you want the player to show up in your blog post. But I would leave it default to one or the other, so at least the player shows up if you forget to put it in there. You can put disable if you want. Display player links in WordPress excerpts. What that does is if your site, if your theme uses excerpts to where somebody has to click in one more click to read your blog posts, that's called an excerpt. You can turn this on to have the player show up in the excerpt page as well as the main blog post page. This particular theme I'm using does not have excerpts, or I don't use them. Hide player, that's if you wanted to just hide the player for whatever reason, but you want the player, so leave that unchecked. Same thing with media player, display player, leave that on. Media links, I suggest leaving that on. That's the play a new window link. The download link, you want those two. The play a new window link's kind of cool. If you're surfing around on the web and you find a player like that, you click the play a new window link. It opens up a small window and your podcast plays. And then that small window stays open when you navigate to a different page. So it's real handy for your listeners. So another thing I like to check is include file size and duration. I like to let people know what they're in for when they come to my website and they look at my player and they say, oh, okay, well, it's 25 minutes long and it's 15 megabytes. That way, if they're on a limited data plan and they're on their cell phone, they can decide whether they want to download 15 megabytes of me talking about whatever I'm talking about. But kind of lets them know what they're in for. Display player embed link. If you want people to have the ability to display your player on their website, then you can turn that on and it just opens, it has a link. I'll show you that. It has a link under the player that you can copy and paste on another site, kind of like a YouTube embed. Or some places within your site. If you want to have your player in a different spot than just the post, you can do that too. Subscribe links. I said the checkbox to enable the whole mess of subscribe links. Then there's a label. You can change that label if you want to call it something else. Follow, subscribe, whatever. Subscribe's a good word. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on Android or on by default. And you can't turn them off. Subscribe via RSS, you can turn off. I highly suggest you do not turn it off because that helps with discoverability in places like Microsoft and limitedly in Google. They know you have an RSS link. So then the next thing down is subscribe by email. This is the only one that is a little controversial because it's an opt-in email, just like MailChimp and all the others, except you, as the podcaster, do not get the email addresses. You'll get the stats from people that use it because you won't get the stats of how many people use subscribe by email in particular, but you'll get it in whatever browser that they use. But we don't give the email addresses to anybody, including ourselves. But basically, think of it as an app for listeners based on email. It's not an app for podcasters to collect email addresses. So if you're doing that, collecting email addresses in some other way, leave that unchecked, unless you don't mind having 2 opt-ins on your site. Subscribe on Google Podcasts. This one's a little confusing to people too. When you first start out, you will not have you'll have this link. This link is auto-generated, but it won't actually work for probably about a month in most cases. And yes, there will be a recording. I see the question there. So, yep, we will have a recording, either of this session or of one that I did in the past, but I will have a recording. So subscribe on Google Podcasts. Just know that link will not work immediately. So you might want to leave that off for about a month until Google has discovered your podcast, because Google Podcasts is 100% based on Google searchability. They need to find your website with your feed on it, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So the Google Podcasts, that explains that link. So you might leave that off for the first month or so just because it's not going to probably work. The Android link will work immediately, so you're covered for Android people. Subscribe on Stitcher. Stitcher's still a fairly popular Android and iOS app and a website, so you might as well turn that on. Subscribe on TuneIn. TuneIn's good because TuneIn allows you to be in the the smart speakers, and I'm trying to turn mine off. There, I turned it off. So if I say, Alexa, play the latest podcast, Underwater Basket Weaving, it will play the latest Underwater Basket Weaving podcast episode. So that's how you get into those things pretty generically. Subscribe on Spotify. We at Blueberry have a way to get on Spotify. If you're not hosting with Blueberry, you can still get on Spotify by going directly to Spotify's website. It's podcasters.spotify.com, and you can sign in over there and submit your show if you're not hosting with us. Subscribe page. All you need to do here is hit create subscribe page from template. I highly suggest you do that, and I'll show you what that looks like later on. And all the rest of this tells you about the different short codes you can use. Here's the PowerPress short code if you want, to place the player within the post that the episode is posted. This short code does not work outside the post that the episode is posted in. PowerPress playlist, that's we enabled that down here, so don't worry about enabling it up here, because even if you check this box, it'll go away the next time you refresh it. Kind of weird. Subscribe links, I'll show you that in the subscribe page. And then the skip to, this is kind of cool. The skip to code, you can put that in your post and say, skip to space time equals, it gives examples down here, but basically it'll give a little link there that you can hit. And on your post, the player, if you're using the Blueberry player or the default player, will skip to that time in the player. It's kind of cool, and it might be helpful in Google at some point. We don't know yet. Right here where it says having issues, ? If you publish your episode and you don't see the player and you didn't disable the player and you didn't forget the short code and you still don't see the player, we have 4 ways of trying to fix that. So you come here, you hit yes, please try to fix, save your settings, clear your cache, go visit it. Incognito mode works pretty good in the browser, and one of these 4 should fix the player. If not, contact us at support. I see Sean's in the audience there, so hi Sean. People will contact you and say, I can't see my player. Sean's one of my support techs, or one of our support techs at Blueberry, I should say. All right, and the last little setting on this page is play in new Windows settings. By default, it's 420 pixels by 240 pixels. That's the default. It's a pretty nice size, but if you really want to, you can change that size. Go to the bottom and save changes. You will get tired of me saying, go to the bottom and save changes. So, yeah. Sean just said, I'll just tell him to call Mike. Gee, thanks. Anyway, that's the website tab. Feeds tab. The most important part of you podcasting is your feed. Think of your feed as the transmitter for your radio station. And if you ever wonder what your feed address is, it's right here. Right there. That is your feed address. On your site, that would be your feed address. And so it's always there. And if you're using the default feed, and believe me, this webinar is for using the default feed. It is not for using category podcasting, which I highly discourage you from using unless you have a reason to do it. And the reason that you want to sort out your podcasts, you could still use categories to organize your site without using category podcasting. So please, please, please talk to somebody in support before you enable category podcasting if you only have one show, because there's no reason to have it if you don't have more than one show. And anyway, get get grumpy if I'm not careful here. All right, so right now you notice it says warning. You must have at least one podcast episode in your feed for your feed to be valid. I always tell people that the number one requirement for being in a podcast directory is to have a podcast. That means you must have a published episode on your website before your feed is active. That's what that warning's telling you. So you can't submit to Apple, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeart, whatever. You can't submit to any directory until you have at least one episode. And actually, it is just one episode that's required. Don't listen to those people that tell you need 3, you need 5, you need 8, you need 10. Don't. That's not a requirement. They may have reasons for it. I don't agree with those reasons, but that's just me. I'm opinionated. Anyway, that's why that warning's there. So after we publish the first episode, that warning will go away, and you will indeed have a podcast feed. While we're here, let's tick that box. Do not allow other plugins to modify podcast feeds. There are a lot of plugin developers that don't know anything about podcasting and probably don't care about it. This may help. If they write a plugin that you install that messes with your podcast feed, this may help. It won't in all cases. Accelerate feed is good because faster is better. Feed discovery. If you tick this on, which I want you to, that will help you get into Google Podcasts quicker. Still going to probably take a month, but might take 3 months if you don't tick that. That puts the feed address of your podcast in the headers in the right spot so Google can find it quicker. And then this enable web sub, that's a new thing. Once you are in Google Podcasts in particular and some other apps, Google Podcasts will update your RSS feed or update your listing for your show immediately upon publishing your episode, which is very odd for podcasting. Almost everybody else, there's a 24-hour delay. Yes, 24 hours. We can go into a lot of reasons why, but unless you're subscribed to a podcast at Apple, you're not going to see your podcast at Apple for up to 24 hours after you publish it. Anyway, RSS2 image, turn that on. Emojis, that's kind of a thing the millennials at the office in Columbus turned on. It's kind of cool if you want to have emojis in your feed. I leave it off, but you can turn it on if you want. Feed title. The number 2 question I get, and I'm sure Sean will agree with me, the number 2 question we get is, how do I change the title of my podcast? This right here is the title of your podcast. Okay. The blog title, if you notice here, is underwaterbasketweaving.net. If you leave this blank, that'll be the title of your podcast. So put something in there, even if it's the same, because later on, if you want to change the name of your podcast, you can do that without changing the name of your website or anything else. That's where you change it. Feed description. This is a one-liner description of your overall show, not any episode, but your overall show. So here's my feed description for the Underwater Basket Weaving podcast. And make sure you have that copied because you're going to use that at least one more time. Podcast mirror feed URL. It says new. It's been there for about a year. Don't put anything in there, please. Nothing. Zero, zilch, not even a space. Don't do anything with that box unless we tell you to. Either you go to podcastmirror.com, sign up and set up, and in there it'll tell you what to do with that. But don't do that just arbitrarily, because whatever you put in there, and yes, Apple has a thing called a mirror feed. That is not what goes there. Okay? Just don't put anything there. That will totally mess you up. Show most recent. The number 1 thing we get, actually it's probably not number 1 anymore, but it was for a long time, is I just put out episode number 11, and now episode number 1 is no longer in, at that time they said iTunes, but now they'll say Apple Podcasts if they know what they're talking about. But anyway, that means that the site is defaulted to 10 episodes in the RSS feed. See that? Site default 10. So you can override that default by putting the number in here. You used to have to go to the reading settings in WordPress, and now you don't have to do that. You can just override it right here. And I say throw 300 in there. If it gets too big, you can always turn it down, but 300 is a good one. Personally, I only show 25. And then if anybody wants to go get anything older on my podcast, they just come to my website, because all the episodes, even if you have 10,000 episodes, will be on your website still. And if you're going to put anything here over the number 10, check that box. It says maximize number of episodes while maintaining optimal feed size. That will attempt to keep your feed small enough to get actually 300. And 300 is the maximum. You can put a bigger number in there, but it isn't going to do you any good anywhere, because Apple, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, and so on will not show any more than 300. All right, maximize. And it doesn't mean they don't exist. Like I said, they're still on your website. So even if you put 1 here, all of them still exist on your website. It's just what's available in the apps, syndicated. All right, copyright. If you want to throw a copyright in there, you can. If you're in most of the English-speaking countries of the world and most of the Western countries of the world, the fact that you are making media, you're making something creative, means you are copyrighted. Check your local laws. In the US, it's definitely true. Canada, a few other places. But and if you want the fancy little C symbol on Mac, it is Command G. And on Windows, you hold the Alt key and then hit +0169 really fast, and it might work about half the time. Either that or go find the copyright symbol somewhere on the web, copy and paste it. That's what I do on Windows. All right, location, if it's important, put it in there. I happen to be in what I consider my favorite place in the United States, and that is Traverse City, Michigan. And we are the cherry capital of the world, but it's not important really. But so if you want to put it in there, you can. If you don't, that's fine. On some car dashboards, if somebody's listening in TuneIn Radio, on some car dashboards, if you hit local radio on TuneIn or on the app even, I show up because I have Traverse City, Michigan in that location. Some apps will read that, some won't. Let's see. Okay, another show. Sean goes, but how will I know if the copyright symbol I copy itself is copyrighted? Okay, thanks. I don't know. Maybe we should get Barry to do a legal webinar. Barry's our corporate counsel. That'd be fun. All right, donate link. Donate link as it is right now, as of this recording on September 18th, 2019. As of this recording, this donate link, if you fill it out, only shows up in one obscure iOS app that almost nobody uses called Skipcast. This may change in the future as a standard becomes available for RSS donate links. But if you want to throw something in there, donate URL would be like for Patreon or PayPal or whatever. You could throw that in there. A donate label, buy me a coffee, buy me a beer, whatever you want to put in there. And on Skipcast, the app on iOS, there'll be a button that says buy me a beer. And if they click that, they'll go to PayPal and then give you money. Nobody uses Skipcast. I don't worry about it. All right, parental rating. Parental rating is important in the United States. Unbelievably to me, people listen to audio podcasts on a television, believe it or not. So, that being the case, you want to make sure you have this rating set due to the VCHIP rule in the United States. If you are not specifically a kids program, do not select anything with a Y in it. So the TVY, TVY7, TVY7 dash whatever. I don't. Anyway, none of the youth ones, the 3Y ones, don't do that. GPG 14, whatever. And here's the description of that. And that will allow parents, if they want to block you if you're up here in TVMA, TV14. Okay, that's important only in, like set-top box apps such as Apple TV, Roku, Boxy, so on and so on. I don't know if Boxy's even around anymore, and I'm pretty sure Google doesn't even have a set-top box anymore. But anyway, that's an ever-changing thing. So anyway, go to the bottom and save changes. Got too much more going on. Remember I said copy that feed description right here. Copy that. Well, I'm gonna have to copy that again because I copied something else. All right, so I'm gonna copy that again. Take my own advice. Go to Apple and copy it again here in the subtitle. The subtitle only shows up in very limited places, so you might as well just reuse that other copy. Why not? Let's see, I got a window in my way here. So I gotta find my, oh, here we go. Now here's my longer version of that. It's basically, this summary is just a longer version of your little short one-liner, because you can put more characters in there if you want to. It says you can put hyperlinks in there. You can if you want. Apple does a pretty darn good job of linking back to your post and linking back to your website, so there's really no reason to put any other links in there, in my humble opinion. These two check boxes, I would leave them unchecked. In fact, I do leave them unchecked. Just letting you know. All right. This is a little confusing, and this will go away in a future version of PowerPress with this category area here. Notice there's up to July 19 and then August 19 plus. Well, we're past August 19, so only worry about this. Select your category. If you want to add 2 more categories, you can click this more link and it'll add 2 more, but only worry about this column. This column will not work, or this column will not be, don't worry about it. Apple won't look at it. So this is the only one you have to worry about. And notice things changed. There used to be education technology. Notice that's not there anymore. So Apple changed their categories. Make sure you're on the right categories. Poor people at SoundCloud can't change their categories because SoundCloud fired their podcast team. Anyway, I shouldn't pick on other companies, should I? All right, iTunes explicit tag. You must pick clean or explicit. And if you are explicit, and that means if you're dropping F-bombs all the time or talking about subjects that you wouldn't want your 4-year-old kid to listen to, click explicit. It'll only block you from a couple of countries' iTunes stores, Apple podcast stores. I'm even doing it. But definitely, Apple wants to change the name from iTunes to Apple Podcasts, but all the tags are still saying iTunes. That's why all this stuff says iTunes. When they change their tags, we'll change our tags. All right. So make sure you do your explicit tag. It's going to come up saying no option selected. Don't leave it like that, or you won't get an Apple. iTunes author name, despite what anybody else tells you, because they're wrong if they're telling you that you can put anything in there except for a name. Now, a name can be a person, a name can be a couple of people, or a name can be an entity, a company, something like that. You can do that, but it has to be a name, and it also cannot match your podcast title. So in my case, if I wanted to say that, underwater basket weave. In fact, I have that sort of problem with the podcast I have. I have a podcast called Mike Dell's World, and my author name is Mike Dell's World Studios. I can't use that, so I had to type my name. So type your name or the host name or host names. So you could put like Mike Dell, and if Sean was joining me, I would say Sean Thorpe. Okay, I can do that in the name, but it has to be a name. You cannot have a descriptor in there. You cannot have other superfluous keywords and tags. And that's the same thing with the title too. I didn't mention that when we were talking about the title, but the title has to be the title. It can't be a descriptor and it can't be a name. So I couldn't say the Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast with Mike Dell. No, just Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast. That's the title. Mike Dell goes in the iTunes author name. Okay, iTunes email. Do not overthink this. This is an email that you actually check. Okay, don't spam me at yahoo.com or whatever, weird spam email that you don't check. You have to check this one because it's important. Apple and everybody else that you submit your podcast to be in a directory is going to contact you using this email. Since I get paid to check that email, that's one I'll check. I'll put in there. All right, no option selected under type. Do not mess with this unless you specifically know what you're doing. You can leave it on episodic, default, or no option selected. Either one is okay. Do not click serial unless you really know what that means. And if you don't know what that means, get a hold of me. Same thing here. Set iTunes new feed URL. If you click this, it's going to warn you. Read the warning. It says, warning, changes made are permanent. In the new feed URL, if it's incorrect, you'll lose subscribers and no longer be able to update your listing at Apple. All right. And it says, do not modify this setting unless you absolutely know what you're doing. So don't do it. Same thing with these two down here. These two checkboxes, if you tick either one of those, you're going to disappear from Apple and many other directories. No need to do that unless you're going to quit podcasting. Go to the bottom here and save changes. See, I'm getting all preachy, aren't I? Okay, the Google tab. As I explained to you, or maybe I didn't. Did I? Probably not. This is for Google Play Music Podcast Directory. Google Play Music Podcast Directory is no longer the thing at Google. It does exist. It's not maintained. It's going away. Trust us. Don't mess with it. So nothing goes in here. This tab will disappear in a very near future version of PowerPress. So don't mess with it. Artwork. This is the one that's the most fun for me because it's overly complicated. We get a lot of questions about it. So here's how you upload your artwork. Your artwork first must be 1400 by 1400 pixels. That means exactly square and at least 1400 by 1400 pixels. It can be up to 3000 by 3000 pixels. I don't suggest that. I say 1400 by 1400 is plenty good and will help you with the unlisted requirement that's here, that it be under 1/2 of 1 megabyte in file size. Try doing that at 3000 pixels. It's hard. It's tough. You won't do it. Besides that, 3000 by 3000 pixels can be blown up to billboard size. Most people are looking at their phones and your image is going to be at most 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. 1400 pixels is more than enough for that. So anyway, so once you have the compliant JPEG or PNG in RGB format that is exactly square and 1400 by 1400 pixels, now be careful and follow me very carefully. Everybody jumps ahead of me. Click Upload New Image at the bottom of the first paragraph. Everybody jumps on this Choose File. Don't do that. Then click Also Use as RSS Image and click Use iTunes Image above. Notice it still says iTunes Image because that's what the tag says in the feed. All right. Once you've got those three checked, then click Choose File and go find your, let's see, I got a crap folder. No, my artwork is not crap. It's in the webinar folder. And there is my beautiful artwork. And now there's the name of my beautiful artwork. Go to the bottom and save your changes. And you'll notice that once you do that, maybe I didn't click it hard enough. Oh, my mouse died. Ah, don't you love it? What if I can hit enter? All right. This mouse dies at least once per webinar. So basically, once you save the changes, let's see if my mouse comes back. It's the one complaint I have about Mac, the Bluetooth mice. Oh my, that's real fun. All right. Did everything else die? Uh-oh. Are we still on? All right. Give me a second. I'll have to edit this out of the video. Well, that's terrible. Have to figure this out. Give me a second here. Oh, come on, mouse. It's terrible. There it goes. Well, I didn't get the mouse to go, but the keyboard went. You'll notice that there's connection lost. Does that mean it's going to come back? Yes, there it is. Look at that. All right. Notice that your URL to your image is up there and it's down here. These are the two places it needs to be. Look at that, and it even zooms. All right, so those are the two places, RSS2 image and the iTunes image. All right, so go down to the bottom and save your changes one more time for good measure. And now we are ready to publish the first episode of the Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast, or whatever podcast you're going to do. So, as I said before, podcasting is exactly the same thing as blogging, and therefore you make a post, P-O-S-T, not a page, not anything other than P-O-S-T-S, posts. You make a post. Now, if your WordPress is in a different language, that might be different, but essentially it's the default post in WordPress. You add new, and then here's where there's going to be a difference between whether you're using using Blueberry hosting or not. The title of the episode, if you notice here, I'm going to paste one in. The title of my episode is text, and then I put here at the end this weird little code for the episode title. So it's Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast 001. That's my episode number. So that's cool. All right, then you always want to type at least something in the blog post. And a transcript is probably not the best thing to put in there, but just a brief description of your episode. Put that in the main blog post. Categorize it how you want to, tag it how you want to, set featured image if you want to. None of that is a big deal about the podcast. This is more for the website. And then you're going to come down here, and if you are using Blueberry hosting, you're going to click this big blue bar. And then you're going to click Upload Media File. And see, you'll see drag and drop here or select file. Let me see if I can drag and drop it. Sometimes that works and sometimes it does not. Oh, geez. Why did that folder open there? I'm having Mac issues today. All right, so now we're going to get the webinar folder open here. There's my episode. It's very nice and short. File names. File names are not N-O-T, not anything anybody ever sees. So make sure it's well organized and short and sweet, because if you make it complicated, you're going to cause other issues with stats and other directories and stuff. So shorter the better. Letters, numbers, underscores, dashes only, and either a letter or number at the end before the .mp3. So drag and drop it. You'll see that you get some Star Wars stuff there. Our developer Lena is a Star Wars fan and she built the uploader. Anyway, once that's done uploading, that was a short file. Yours will take longer, probably. You'll see that the two boxes closed, and you're going to see this right here. You click Verify URL. You get the green verified successfully, and you hit publish. If you are not hosting with Blueberry, you upload it to wherever it is, and you need the full media URL. Starts with HTTP or HTTPS and ends with .mp3, or if you want M4A, or if it's video, MP4 or M4V. Those are the only four that I suggest you use. If it's .AAC, it won't work. If it's .wave, don't upload it. Waves do not work. It has to be an MP3. Anyway, the only difference is instead of uploading it right here, you upload it wherever, and then copy the link in there. It has to be the full link. So publish the episode. And the minute that this finishes publishing, you are podcasting. Yep. Apple doesn't have to give you permission. You are podcasting. Yeah, right. Windows Media Format. Sure, Sean. Getting heckled. That's all right. All right. One thing, those extra tags I told you about. If you want to, like Apple doesn't really like having this number right here. So they don't like that. That's okay. They don't have to like that because we have a special thing for them. So I copy everything here under other than the number. I copy that, and then I go back down here to the episode box and I paste that in. Intro episode. And then under number, I put 001. And in Apple, it's going to show that, and then it's going to show 001 period, and actually it's going to say 001 period underwater basket weaving intro episode. That's really all there is to it. That just makes it look better at Apple. Almost no other directory uses or app uses these tags, so your mileage may vary. Update the episode, or you could do that before you publish. That's probably what I should have done. All right, so now we go back to the website and we see that there is our post. There's our player. If I click play, it'll play. By the way, I highly recommend after the webinar, you go over to underwaterbasketweaving.net and listen to that. I'm kind of proud of it. It's a little 2-minute thing. Anyway, also under here, you notice that there's the play a new window link. If you click that, the little window opens up and it says not secure because I don't have an HTTPS site, which is okay for now. There's the embed code I told you about. So if you can do that, you can copy that player into another website. There's the durations, 2 minutes, 14 seconds and 2 megabytes. There's your download link. And when you click the download link, about half the time, it's going to actually just play in the browser. That's normal. Download, you can't force a download without forcing other weird stuff upon the web browser people, the person that's visiting your site. So web download link, the best way is to right click and hit download, but most people don't do that. They're going to hit play or they're going to hit one of these subscribe links. Notice the subscribe links over here. That is a widget called subscribe to podcast that comes with PowerPress, works with or without Blueberry hosting. Also notice the more subscribe options. That's that subscribe page. I'll show you that in a minute after we get done populating the rest of the links. But you'll notice that it says Android, email, Google Podcasts, RSS, and more. It doesn't have Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, so on. So the way we do that is we go to the Destinations tab, and we're going to see if Apple's having their problem today. They've been having a problem, and the whole world was panicking. Anyway, so go to Destinations. Right here is your feed, so you might as well copy that. Keep it in the copy because you're going to use that. And then click this blue link that says Submit Podcast to Apple. You're going to come to this page. It's going to go through all the things you have to have before you submit to Apple. But since you are watching this webinar, you should have all those things. Sign in to Apple Podcast Connect or iTunes Podcast Connect. Okay. Log in with your Apple ID. So you must have an Apple ID and an Apple Store ID. So if you don't, you got to somehow get a credit card on file with Apple. It's a little frustrating sometimes, but once you have your Apple ID, you log in here at this site. And let me see if I remember my password. And if you click that link from the Destinations tab, it's already going to pre-populate the feed address for you, so you won't have to paste it in. But sometimes you'll just see the thing says URL, you paste it in. But since you did it from there, and it gives you kind of a little preview of what Apple's going to see. So you don't have to hit validate because it already validated. It's prepared for submission. It's Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast is the title is going to show in Apple. Description, this is what it's going to show in Apple. Got some weird code in it, but that's all right. It's got my copyright. It's got the link back to the website. It's English. It's audio. It's not explicit. And it shows the first episode that we posted. As long as all that looks the way you want it, go up here and hit submit. What's going to happen when you hit submit is Apple's going to send an email to that email address you put in the Apple settings. And it's going to say your podcast has been submitted for review at Apple Podcasts. Anywhere between 1 day and 5 days, mostly, your podcast will be approved and they will send you a link, subscription URL. It's not probably going to look like that now because it's actually now says applepodcast.com in it or whatever, but whatever they send you, place it in the Apple subscription URL box in destinations. Don't put anything else in there, just that. Scroll down, hit save changes. And then when we go back to the website, you'll notice that now we have an Apple Podcast link and a purple button in the widget. That's how those get turned on. They have to be checked. They have to be checked in the website tab, and then they also have to be populated, at least the ones that aren't automatic. You'll notice the Google Podcast link is automatic. Some of the other ones aren't even listed here. The Blueberry one is kind of interesting. You don't actually have to do anything. If you're hosting at Blueberry, you don't put anything here at Blueberry. So what you do with Blueberry is you go log into your Blueberry account, and if you're hosting with us, go to Hosting Settings, click the top box, paste your feed in there, hit save. Okay, then go back to the podcaster dashboard, go to Listing Settings, make sure that's in there. When you get your Apple link, put that in there too, hit save and update, and it's going to pull in my episode that we posted. See, episodes added 1. And ironically, if Blueberry's directory doesn't update quick enough for you, you can come over here and do it manually if you want. But always go back to the podcaster dashboard. There's not a lot you do at Blueberry, but that's one of them that you have to do at least once. And also you come over here and look at your stats if you're hosting with us, or even if you just have stats with us. So anyway, that's how you get into Blueberry. If you really want to put that link in there, you click on the link, you copy the link out of the browser, and you come back to the settings and you paste it into the Blueberry listing URL. As of right now, that does absolutely nothing. That may do something in the future. Stitcher, same way. You click here, you go through read the instructions, click on the link, go to Stitcher, submit your show, and then they're all different. And with Stitcher, you have to go to Stitcher.com. After they've approved you, you go to Stitcher.com. They're not going to send you a link, and you find your listing at Stitcher and then copy it out of the browser and paste it in there. Same thing with TuneIn.com. Where's TuneIn? I have a TuneIn link right here. So you go over to TuneIn.com, search for your podcast, and paste the link from the browser right there. Spotify, that one's a little different. Now, if you are hosting at Blueberry, I'm going to save the changes. If you're hosting at blueberry.com, let's refresh. You'll notice that you're going to get some more links here. Now we've got Apple, Android, email, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, RSS, and more. Let's go one more step here. All right, so with Stitcher, or with Spotify, if you're hosting at Blueberry, you go to Blueberry's dashboard, and you scroll down to where it says Destinations, and you click Get on Spotify. You hit next, you follow through on that. That's how you get on Spotify. And then back here in the destinations or in the dashboard, destinations, right here, you click on Get on Spotify, and there'll be a link there for you after you've been approved at Spotify. Do I have a Spotify one here? I do. All right, so when you're done with that, you get that link, you come back here, you put Spotify listing URL. By the way, the next version of PowerPress is going to have a lot more of these. They're going to have Deezer. They're going to have Pandora, iHeart. I don't know. There's a bunch of them that we're adding. So we're not adding ways of getting there, but we are going to add the ability to make the link for it. And the links look pretty cool. I could show you a preview of that if we get time, but we're almost up on an hour, so we're going to have to scoot along here. All right, so let's go back. That's your once I refresh, then you'll see that Spotify's added. But basically, that's how you populate these links. That's how you populate the links under the player. And if you click this more link, this is the subscribe page that we made for you. So, and it's basically that, and it explains why you want to subscribe and how to subscribe on various apps. Everything on this page is editable. So you just go into pages and edit anything in here except for this box. That's that subscribe widget shortcode thing. All right, let me, if you got any questions, go ahead and shoot them in there. I will have a recording of this available probably tomorrow afternoon sometime, so don't be in a hurry. But I'll have a recording of this. I'll try to remember to edit out the dead mouse thing. But let me show you what the new subscribe widget looks like for the new version of PowerPress coming out soon. And some shameless plugging of my own podcast website. Anyway, this is MikeDell.com, and there's the new subscribe widget. Notice it has Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Android, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Deezer, by email, by RSS, and more options. And the more options goes to a subscribe page that looks kind of similar. But the key to this is there's also a Pandora. I'm just not on Pandora yet. Pandora takes a long time to get on. So anyway, it looks pretty cool. You can make these square, you can make these rounded edges. I think there's some other options for the widget. It's pretty cool. Anyway, that's a little preview of PowerPress 8. Coming somewhat soon. I wouldn't hold my breath, but coming soon. Anyway, any questions? Let's see. And no, Sean, you can't publish in Windows Media format. Well, you could. And actually, the two people that are still using Windows Media will probably enjoy that immensely. And ironically, that's the only place that ID3 tags are used routinely. Well, I guess Overcast uses it for artwork, but it's optional. All right, well, we'll call this a webinar, and I will look forward to probably talking to some of you, and Sean, you for sure, soon. And everybody have a good evening. I'm going to flip this over to here with my contact information there, or better yet, use the support@blueberry.com. That way, Sean and Dave and John sometimes, and Todd and Angelo and the rest of the gang over at Blueberry can get that email in our ticket system. So that's a good place to go 24/7. That's monitored more often than the phone, which is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. It says 9 to 5 on the website, but I'm usually here early. And I'm the only one that answers the phone routinely, although Sean has pulled phone duty once in a while. And that works, like I said, Monday through Friday business hours, East Coast time. There's my direct number, and my direct number quits working at 5 o'clock as well. So you can call it all you want off hours. I'm still not going to answer you, but leave a message and I'll get back to you. So everybody have a good one.